From the News Channel 5 Network, this is OpenLine.
Hey there, happy Tuesday to everyone out there. Jessica Ralston here with OpenLine tonight, and we're talking about something that has a lot of people here in Music City talking, and it's preserving our historic spaces and places. And if you joined any of our earlier newscasts on News Channel 5, you know we were talking about the release of the list of the Nashville 9 today, and we're going to talk about that more. We want to introduce our guest. Robbie Jones is here with Historic Nashville. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jessica.
And Carolyn Brackett from the National Trust. Is that your official title, we'll say. And I know you both have a lot of experience with all of this, and we have a lot of information to share. And we'd love to hear your phone calls. And I know a lot of you have opinions about this, so call into 737+. We're going to talk about the places that made the list this year, of course, the drama that's surrounding Studio A, what's going on over at Printers Alley, and what can be done to try to save some of these spaces and places. So let's first talk about Historic Nashville. Give us a little background for anyone who might not know.
We're the city's nonprofit historic preservation organization. Been around for 45 years. This is our 45th anniversary, and we complement the city's historic commission, which the city has an agency. We complement them, but we're a nonprofit. We support ourselves. We're an all-volunteer board. We all have day jobs and do this in our free time because it's what we love to do. And so we do programs, tours. We have advocacy programs, and easement program where we own easements on properties and help save them. And the Nashville 9, which is a new program of ours that's been around since 2009, and that brings attention to buildings that the community is concerned about that might be demolished or something might happen to them. And then we try to put the spotlight on those particular properties that year and work with the owners and different groups, community groups, government agencies to try to do what we can to save them.
Okay, and as we go on throughout the hour here, we're going to talk about which 9 were chosen this year. But you obviously have to kick it off starting about the biggest, most one that's making headlines now and causing all the controversy and concern. Of course, that's RCA Studio A over on Music Row, which, if you've been following our newscasts, we've been telling you that, well, the developer now says if you don't come in by this certain date in December, I believe, you know.
No, it's actually the end of the month.
It's the end of the month,
30th.
and then would they start the construction in December?
They've pulled the demolition permit, but the city put a 90-day delay on it in order to have an opportunity to explore other options.
Right.
And so he set a deadline for September 30th to make an offer. Although the demolition delay will carry on for a few more weeks.
Okay.
And we've been, working behind the scenes as hard as we can ever since it was brought, it was released to the media. Carolyn is the expert on this particular building. She's been working as well at the national level, and actually we brought in people from Washington, D.C. and Charleston to talk to the local leaders about what could be done. So I'm going to let Carolyn talk about this one.
And especially, I guess, and we also, not just about, I mean, this is obviously a historic building. We know many legendary country stars have recorded there. If it were to go ahead as this developer plans, it would look drastically different. It would change the scenery on Music Row. And I think there's a huge concern from the community that Music Row would become ultimately a thing of the past, because I read that Sony is moving over into the new building once it's done in a couple of years in the Gulch, one of the high rises. And I think there's a concern about people moving out, new buildings going in over there, and then it's no longer really Music Row. So if you want to expand a little on that.
Yeah. And I want to start by saying the National Trust for Historic Preservation is very interested in this entire issue, but our success or our work depends on working with partners like Historic Nashville and other partners throughout the community, because preservation decisions are made on a local level. So what we bring to the process is a national awareness, a voice, resources hopefully, and assistance in shaping what that message and that advocacy is. The situation with Studio A just, I think, erupted is probably the right word this summer. I think it caught everyone by surprise to realize that this building, which had a for sale sign in front of it for a number of years, was suddenly being sold, and that the plan was to demolish the building. And this caught a lot of people's attention. From the good perspective, it's got a lot of people now thinking about preservation, about the importance of specific historic sites, but then entire districts and what we call the fabric of our community and the sense of place that Nashville has. And so we began working with some of the local partner stakeholders who are interested in this. A new group formed, the Music Industry Coalition. There's now another group, Save Studio A, that's really zeroing in on that particular building. But when you hear the history of Studio A, you know that it's such a pivotal part of Nashville's story that it's hard to imagine it not being there. I was on Music Row yesterday morning for an early meeting, and at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning, there was a huge group of people standing outside of Studio B waiting to tour. And to me, that just tells us how important our music history is to the story that we have to tell and the place where we live and the place that people like to come visit. So our hope is that we can help in facilitating a conversation about how this place can be saved and then the larger picture of Music Row.
Absolutely. Well, I can't imagine tourists coming into town and maybe 20 years from now and going to Music Row and nothing is there that was there before. It's
right.
What have you left? You can't have all new development. That's part of what makes up the fabric of the city. So you're right, it is extremely important. But what do you do in a situation like this when you have the developer saying, it's just not salvageable, there's asbestos in the floors, and how do you fix a situation like that?
Well, I think that's where a lot of the local leadership has come in. The Save Studio A group is working. They've had a study of their own that they're getting ready to release later this week, where they have found and will suggest that it's not in as bad a shape as we think it might be, and so hopefully that will again raise some hopes that there are opportunities to save this building. And as long as the current owner is willing to listen to proposals, we're hopeful that maybe a consortium, a group of buyers, or a buyer will be able to save it.
Okay, all right.
It reminds me of the Ryman Auditorium story, which a lot of people today cannot imagine Nashville without the Ryman Auditorium. In the early 1970s, the owners were going to demolish it and rebuild, use the bricks to rebuild a replica at Opryland. Mm-hmm. And at the time, people were just aghast. They're like, this is crazy.
Right.
And so, but it was really going to happen. It really went to the 11th hour, and it became a national cause célèbre. There was an op-ed published in the New York Times by a very famous architectural critic that captured the nation's attention. And this is before we had social media or internet. I mean, to get an op-ed about Nashville preservation issue in the New York Times was huge, and that really got everyone's attention. And they shifted gears and decided, let's step back and take another look at this. And then the building was saved, and it's been preserved. Now it's a National Historic Landmark. Nashville only has 6 National Historic Landmarks, and I believe everyone in the whole country can tell you where the Ryman Auditorium is.
Yes.
We have visitors from throughout the world. If you walk down there, you hear all different accents and languages. And so, to me, this is a similar situation today. A lot of people can't see this as being of an equal level, but I believe that Studio A in a few years would be a National Historic Landmark quality property because of what happened there. We can't call ourselves Music City without the Ryman Auditorium, without RCA Studio B or A or these different facilities. Without them, we're not Music City anymore.
Right.
We're Music City in name only. So I think it's at that level of importance and to us and the people that at Historic Nashville and to the community at large. Today we had 100 people show up for a media event on a Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock.
Right.
That was pretty amazing that they took off from work to just show up for this event.
Oh, they're absolutely passionate about it. I totally understand that. Yeah.
I think it's also important to point out, though, that this is a particularly urgent situation. The clock is ticking on this one, but what really needs to happen is a larger conversation about the role of preservation in Nashville's future and what we want the city to be. And so that's what we're hoping through events like Nashville 9 and other activities, is to raise that voice and that conversation and that awareness that we really need to think about, particularly as we're going through this planning process for the city and we're seeing this tremendous change. In any direction you come into downtown, you see cranes, and there's so much construction going on. So it's really important to be at the table and be a part of the conversation, Music Row and in other areas throughout the city.
It's just such a juxtaposition too, because yesterday we had Nashville Next on here talking about how you're going to move the city forward and build and expand, and then to have you here today, though, to show the other side is what you can't do is get rid of everything old and build new, because then you lose everything that the city is built on and what it's about. So it is something that people have to keep in mind. All right, we have some calls coming in, a lot more to talk about. I want to give you the rest of the list, some other places to be thinking about why they were included this year. So make sure you give us a call too at 737+. We'll be right back.